Technology. It's all around us, everywhere we look. Every day, new advances are made in the world of technology. Computers have progressed to the point of being involved in every facet of life. In the medical field, nanotechnology has enabled us to perform surgeries never thought possible before. Sophisticated military technology has turned war into something less reliant on foot soldiers and more on drones, lasers, hypersonic speeds, and more. The automobile has progressed into what are now termed supercars, capable of speeds never dreamed possible by the early inventors. Artificial intelligence is being incorporated into everything, with robots now accomplishing tasks that humans aren't even physically capable of doing. The tasks that used to require several room-sized machines can now be accomplished by a handheld device, a smartphone, no bigger than your hand. Technology, of course, certainly has its place. But there are many individuals and organizations who still think about the good old days, when inventions and technology was in its infancy, and the majority of labor was accomplished by good old-fashioned blood, sweat, and tears. And truly, we wouldn't have all this technology if it weren't for the hard work, experiments, inventions, successes, and failures of those who came before us. It's important to remember where we came from and all the hard work that went into developing the amazing technology we see today. The Sayre Historical Society is one such organization that believes in keeping our history alive, especially the local history of the Sayre, Pennsylvania area. With an official birth date of March 14, 1989, the Sayre Historical Society came into existence through the prominent efforts of James R. Nobles, the Society's first president. With over 500 due-paying members, the Society quickly grew, and artifacts of historical significance to the Sayre area started pouring in from private individuals who had these items tucked away in attics, basements, and storage units. With the sincere desire to share these items with the public, in the interest of keeping Sayre's history alive, the Sayre Historical Society began to look for a place large enough where these items could safely be shared with the public in a museum type of setting. Almost as if by fate, in 2002, the former Lehigh Valley Railroad train station became available and was perfect for fulfilling this purpose. Largely through the efforts of Henry Farley, another founder, past president, and current trustee of the Sayre Historical Society, as well as current Sayre mayor, the train station was obtained for the museum's use. In December of that year, a 99-year lease was signed with Sayre Borough, and renovations began to house the new museum. Not only could museum-quality items be showcased for the public, but they would be showcased in a building that, in and of itself, was historically significant. How historically significant, you ask? Well, to give you just a small idea, President Theodore Roosevelt stopped over in Sayre and Waverly area on the train when he was switching over to the Erie Railroad line on his trip from Jersey City, New Jersey to Chautauqua, New York. Yes, the Sayre Historical Society Museum has a piece of that history on display. Originally built in 1881 to replace a station that burned in 1875, this large, high Victorian Gothic-style structure has details in the Queen Anne motif and was the pride of the Lehigh Valley Railroad in Sayre Borough. Much of the exterior remains the same as it was over 100 years ago, with just a few minor changes taking place. Now, you may be asking yourself, is there really anything interesting to see at this historical museum? Well, come along inside and take a little tour. Now, when going inside, we might as well start at the far end. And as you will remember, this was a passenger station for the Lehigh Valley Railroad and the Black Diamond Express, so why not start with the railroad history? In the far back, you'll see a beautiful model railroad set up. Kids of all ages will enjoy seeing the train make its way around this track. Watch as it enters into mountain tunnels and passes through little quaint villages, passing into the coal mining areas. Moving into the next room, we'll see this beautiful model steam train built by Francis David Gorman. Mr. Gorman lived locally here in Sayre, and he, believe it or not, built this whole model on his kitchen table. Well, when he passed away, his children got this train, and when they passed away, the grandchildren inherited it. Fortunately for the museum, the grandchildren thought it would be best displayed here at the museum for everybody to enjoy. Now, I don't know how many of you have had the opportunity to actually ride in a train car, but if you haven't, there's a display for you. 2 seats from a train are set up with a beautiful backdrop, making it look like you are actually riding in a car. Take a moment to immerse yourself in the surroundings. Notice the conductor standing nearby with an actual Lehigh Valley Railroad outfit, showing what it looked like back in the early days. Also on display, you'll see various items from the Lehigh Valley Railroad: a salt shaker, silver fork, the plate, even a creamer that was all used on the dining car. You'll see a reproduction menu, maps, and ticket stubs, all having to do with the Lehigh Valley Railroad. You'll also see a beautiful large display, large photographs of an engineer, a fireman, in the cab of the steam engine. Now you may think it was a simple job, just driving, as it were, a steam engine, but they had their responsibilities too. In fact, for every curve that the train went around, the engineer was required to put his head out the window and try to peer around the bend to make sure nothing was coming towards them. They had to be ever so vigilant while driving the train. Here at this display, you'll also see some of the many different kinds of lanterns they used with the railroad. Moving on to another display, you'll see a large photograph of Engine 3128. This stand shows how Sayre truly was known as a railroad town. You see, the Lehigh Valley Railroad brought passengers and business to the area. You'll see on display an actual outfit that a fireman would have worn while shoveling coal into the fire pit. You'll also see on display many photographs reminding individuals that Sayre once held one of the largest locomotive shops in the world. You'll see on display many items that were actually produced right here in Sayre at the foundry for the locomotives. And of course, a visit to the museum would not be complete without an opportunity for the kids to actually ring a real train bell. Moving on, you'll also see an old grandfather clock from the Lehigh Valley Railroad. This clock was believed to have been housed in this very facility. Listen to the amazing story of how a gentleman who used to work for the railroad obtained this clock. Another interesting display that we'll come across is a desk with all kinds of old communications equipment on it. Now, I'm sure some of our younger visitors will have no idea what most of this equipment is, but some of our older generation visitors, this is sure to bring back some memories for them. You'll see a typewriter, Morse code transmitter, an old rotary phone, an old switchboard, and more. Now, visitors to this museum are sure to have their interest piqued by seeing this window. You see, this is not a reproduction ticket window. This is the actual original window where passengers would stand at the counter and get their tickets. Listen to the exciting story of how this window was discovered boarded up behind a wall by workers as they were renovating the museum. The ticket window wasn't the only thing found in an amazing way, however. This painting also has an incredible story behind it. It was painted by William Rao, who was a photographer in the late 1800s into the early 1900s. He was hired for several years by the Lehigh Valley Railroad to take photos of scenic views along the train's route. Using this photo that he took of the Black Diamond Express, he painted this large masterpiece, which originally hung in the accounting office for the railroad. In time, the painting ended up in an employee's home and was generally forgotten about. One day, A relative of that employee was having her home renovated and discovered this painting behind a wall. Thankfully, it's been restored and is now on display here at the museum. Another display that is sure to catch the attention of kids and model railroad enthusiasts of all ages is this replica model train display. Everything is set up to mimic exactly how things appeared back in the early 1900s, from the park that used to be right behind the train station to the many buildings along Desmond Street that can still be seen today. Many businesses also have quite an extensive history with the town of Sayre. One such prominent business is the Guthrie Robert Packer Hospital. You see, back in the late 1870s, a man named Robert Asa Packer built a mansion in Sayre on the site of the current hospital. No expense was spared in the building of this mansion. It was known for its exquisite lavish furniture, woodwork, drapes, and boasted 11 fireplaces. Even the dining room ceiling was reported to have been hand-tooled leather. When Robert Packer passed away, the mansion was inherited by his sister, Mary Packer Cummings. She then gave it to Sayre to be used as a hospital, especially for the Lehigh Valley Railroad workers and their families. By 1960, this mansion was torn down to make way for a new addition to the hospital, and relics from that mansion were salvaged and are here on display at the museum. One of the most notable items is this table, custom made using various items from that mansion, the legs being from the staircase, the tabletop is framed from the doorway trim, and the leather under the glass you see here is from the original dining room ceiling, part of the original hand-tooled Moroccan leather that cost $50,000 back in the 1880s. You'll also be treated to a history of Dr. Donald Guthrie himself, whose examination table is here on display. Having worked as a resident at the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota, he was hired to help the Robert Packer Hospital to grow. Using the knowledge and the experience that he gained during his internship and residency, he was instrumental in helping to shape the hospital from the small facility it was in 1910 into what it is today. A tertiary care teaching facility with over 250 beds, a level 1 trauma center with specialties in cardiology and numerous other inpatient and outpatient programs. Guthrie Robert Packer Hospital is also home to Guthrie Air, a regional aeromedical helicopter program, and boasts their very own hospital-based ambulance service, providing advanced life support to much of Bradford and the surrounding counties. The Lehigh Valley Railroad also played a significant role in transporting many individuals from Sayre and the surrounding areas who were enlisted in the armed forces. This photo shows a large group ready to board the train. The gentleman on the left in the dark jacket is George Tomasky. His family took this photo and, after his death, gave the photo to the Sayre Historical Society. Now, in an effort to show just a small part of our appreciation to the men and women who've put their lives on the line to protect our freedoms, you'll find several military uniforms on display. This uniform belonged to Owen Henry Fassett Jr. He served in the U.S. Army Security Agency and served 2 years in Germany. The next 2 uniforms on display belonged to Helen Van Gilder Politi. She served in the Women's Army Corps from 1943 to 1945 in London and Paris. A third display showcases the dress uniform of General James W. Davenport. He wore this uniform during his career in the U.S. Marines from 1907 to 1922. He served during World War I, World War II, and then served as mayor of Sayre. He also was employed by the Lehigh Valley Railroad, and for 40 years he worked as an engineer. In fact, it's interesting to note, when the Black Diamond Express made its last run on May 11, 1959, General James Davenport was at the throttle. The Sayre area is also rich with religious influences. On display here at the museum is this reed pump organ from the original Lutheran church on Elmer Avenue. Purchased around 1880, this organ is over 140 years old. The stained glass window you see here also was taken from that same church and has been preserved by the Sayre Historical Society. Now, there are numerous other items to see here at the museum. a history of the different nationalities that have played a significant role in shaping Sayre into what it is today. Like, for example, this display of an old Sayre Ukes baseball uniform. Or the displays of Italian restaurant entrepreneurs, with restaurants and bakeries still in business today. Old signs and placards. And far too many more items to be able to show in this video. So we encourage you to come out to the Sayre Historical Society Museum, learn all about the amazing history of our area, browse the gift shop, pick up a souvenir, become a member of the Sayre Historical Society, and see how you may be able to contribute to keeping our history alive. Thank you for watching. Please visit www.sayrehistoricalsociety.org for more information.